In this video, we'll learn how to pronounce consonants in Spanish. Pues en este video vamos a aprender cómo pronunciar las consonantes en español. Unlike in English, in Spanish, most of the letters represent one sound, no matter where they are or how they are located in the word. However, there are a few exceptions, and I want to show them to you in this video. And we'll go in alphabetical order. So let's start with the first one, which is C. In Spanish, C. And you can already see that C can be pronounced in two different ways. And that depends on what are the letters that follow C in the Spanish words. So if the C is followed by a consonant, A, O, or U, it is pronounced like the C in case. So let me show you two words for that. You can have the word clave, which means key, or the word casa, which means house, and you can hear the resemblance. Case, clave, casa. Okay, this is the sound. However, if the C in a Spanish word is followed by E or I, like for example in the word cielo, which means the sky, then it is more similar to this TH sound in thing, okay? Thing, cielo. Some people, especially in Spain, pronounce it more like an S, like sound, sound, cielo. But I'm more inclined, or most people are more inclined towards the TH or something in between, so we're always safe with TH. Okay, so if a C is followed by consonant A, O, U, it's like case. If the C is followed by E or I, it's like thing. Clave, casa, cielo. Now let's move on to another letter, which is CH, or che in Spanish. And it is basically pronounced the very same way as you pronounce the combination of CH in English. Okay, chocolate. Also in Spanish, you can say chocolate. And it's the very same sound, okay? Chocolate, chocolate. No problems with that. And now we're getting to the most tricky letter in the entire Spanish alphabet, which is the G. And you can see I have three things listed next to the G. But basically there are just two ways to pronounce it. Similar to the C, there are two ways of pronouncing the G, and that depends on the letters that follow it in the word. But there are three different cases. So the first one, and you can see the resemblance, it's completely the same like with the C, but the pronunciation will be a bit different. So again, if the G in a Spanish word is followed by a consonant A, O, U, like in the words, let's say glaciar, which means glacier, or Gabriela, which is a name for a lady or a girl, then you read it as a normal G in English, like in the word get, okay? Get, glaciar, Gabriela. However, if the G is followed by E or I, like for example in the word gente, which means people, then you read it as, and you don't have the equivalent of that in English, but I like to call it the flu H, because it's kind of like trying to pronounce H if you have a flu or if you have a runny nose. So it's pretty much a combination of H and like an R, and it sounds like this. H, okay? Gente. Glaciar, Gabriela, normal G. Gente, kind of like a flu H or a flu G. And this will probably take some practice because this kind of sound or this vocal does not exist in English. However, there is also a third version, or a third way that G can appear in a Spanish word, and it is pretty much a combination of these two. So you can have a word like guerra, which means war. And this is the case, the G is followed by a U, but it is then followed by either an E or an I. And you have to combine these two to read this one properly. So what happens here is that the U kind of erases the effects of the E, but the U ends up being silent. So the U kind of sacrifices itself, you don't read it, in order for the G to be pronounced in the easier way. Okay, so guerra, you just read the G in its normal form, and then you read the rest of the word. Guerra, guerra. So that's it. We have already passed the most difficult letter in the Spanish language, and then we have just a couple more coming, which are much easier than the ones we have already covered. So the next one is an H in H in Spanish, and it is never pronounced. It does not have, you just ignore it. If you see it in the word, you ignore it. You don't pronounce it. So let me show you a word, hora, for example, which I've already showed you in the previous video when we talked about vowels. And what you do is you just don't read it. You just read what follows, hora, okay? Or also if it appears in the middle of the word, like for example in the word zanahoria, which means carrot in Spanish, again, you just don't read it. You pretend like it's not there and you go on with the rest of the word, zanahoria. Let's move on to J in Spanish, jota, which again is tricky because you pronounce it as the flu H, the same way you pronounce a G if it is followed by E or I. Let me show you a word for that, jardín. Jardín, which means garden in Spanish. So the jota is always pronounced like the flu H, so you kind of have to learn it at some point of your Spanish learning experience. And if we move on, we have ñ, which is pronounced like the combination of N and Y in the word canyon, for example. So let me show you a Spanish word for that. Let's say cariño, which is used between two people who love each other. It's like my love or my dear, okay, cariño. Be careful because Spanish alphabet also has the letter N, which is the same letter N as you have in English. There's no peculiarities about it, but it is distinguished from this ñ sound through this wave. Then the next one we have here is a Q in Spanish, Q, and it is pronounced like the pronunciation of C and U together in English. So quota, okay, Q. And a Spanish word to demonstrate it is, for example, quedar. Quedar, which is a verb, and it means to stay. Okay, so quota, quedar, k. And the last letter that we have here is th, which again is pronounced very similarly to one of the pronunciations of C. Okay, so it's like the TH in thing, for example. And again, I'll use the example of zanahoria, which I have said before is carrot, zanahoria. And you can see the resemblance, I believe it. Zanahoria, thing, th. Or if you have problems with this, you can use a more S-like sound, okay? Sound, zanahoria. But if you can, try to use the TH more. Okay, so that is it. We have covered all of the tricky consonants in the Spanish language, and we'll move on with some more interesting things in the next videos.